Hello viewer, you're welcome to my Beautifier Community Youth, Uganda. I am your host, Jamesboy Imani, and today I'm going to speak about the topic defining Sabbath. This is a topic that I feel God is inspiring me to speak about today. And before I go in details, I would wish to have a disclaimer. This episode is not an attack on any religion or religious beliefs, and is not an attack on any persons, and is not biased in any way, but it's basically in essence to help someone out there to understand the higher purpose and greater meaning that God would wish us as humanity to understand when it comes to this topic known as the Sabbath. Sabbath is a word that comes from a Hebrew word, Shabbat, which means rest, ease, or to desist from something. Basically, this means it is an observation where Sabbath means rest, to be in a state of rest, in a state of not being at work, in a state that is not exhausting. To ease means to reduce. That means when you're easing on something, maybe a burden. And to desist means to stop someone from doing something in order to experience a particular feeling. And in this state, basically it means, in this aspect, it means the state of being at rest. That's basically the meaning of the word Sabbath. The origin of Sabbath is found in the Bible, in the story of creation, where we see God created everything, the earth, the seas, and everything that is in the world in 6 days. Then he rested on the seventh day, making it holy. So we find this story in Exodus chapter 20, verse 11, where God created everything in 6 days and decided to rest on the seventh day. That is the origin of the Sabbath. The Jewish people, or you can say the Jewish community, have always observed the Sabbath day from ancient days, and are still very strict when it comes to the observation of the Sabbath day. The Sabbath law is mentioned in the Ten Commandments, in the Mosaic law, and it is the fourth commandment in the Ten Commandments, which says, "You shall observe the Sabbath day and keep it holy, and you shall rest from everything that you do in order to observe God." That is in Exodus chapter 20. It is the fourth commandment. In the Old Testament times, it was so serious that for the observation of Sabbath, no one was required to do any work, not just individual work, but even the maid servant, or even the man servant, or even the animals. No one was supposed to do any work. And it was actually a law at that time. And anyone who did anything contrary to that was considered to be breaking God's law, or you can say the law of God. In Exodus chapter 20, verse 10, it says, "But the seventh day is Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your man servant or maid servant, nor your animals, nor the alien within your gates." So this is in Exodus chapter 20, verse 10. You can see at the end they say, "No, the alien." That means the visitor, the alien. So it means nobody was supposed to do anything between the period of Sabbath, the beginning of Sabbath, to the end of it. So it was something that was really reinforced, and it was very, very strict. And we have still the non-Jewish people who still observe the Sabbath day as a day. The most notable people, actually the Gentiles, who observe the Sabbath, the most notable denomination which observes the Sabbath is the Seventh-day Adventist Christians or movement, who still observe the Sabbath and believe that Saturday as a day is a day that was set apart for observing God's law by resting and doing nothing. And they consider it as the official recognized day of worship according to what God dictates. So when Jesus came to earth, we see that he was in agreement with the Sabbath. He agreed on the Sabbath worship because he was often seen in the temples, and he was always there on the Sabbath day, just like the rest of the people. But some of the things that he did seemed to be contradicting and going against the beliefs of the Sabbath at that particular period, which saw him at loggerheads and contentions with the religious leaders at the time and the Pharisees, who were against some of his particular conducts. For example, Jesus did a lot of healings on Sabbath. He healed a lot of people. He did a lot of miracles. Even at times, there's a story somewhere which shows that Jesus moved in the field with the disciples, and they were seen picking grain. This was a concern to the Pharisees who were very strict with the law, and they saw that Jesus was actually breaking the law of the Sabbath and thereby blaspheming God. And in the end, we see that actually, due to how Jesus was conducting himself on the Sabbath, it is the main reason that these Pharisees and religious leaders began plotting on how to kill him, which in the end led to his crucifixion and death. That's how serious the Sabbath issue was, because it actually led to the death of Christ. In Matthew chapter 5 verse 17 it says, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them." This is what Jesus was saying to the people at that time. He said he did not come to abolish the Mosaic law, but he came to fulfill it. Basically, here he means he came to add more meaning, to add deeper understanding and revelation into these commandments that seemed to have been very tough and reinforced in the old covenant. So basically, Jesus came to show us greater purpose. So whatever Jesus was doing, he was trying to attach a greater understanding to these things. Of course, we know the law is used as a mirror to show us where we are going wrong. But according to Jesus, the law should not have been enforced to that degree, because it was basically something that was meant to show us where we are going right or wrong, in order for us to adjust our lifestyles and do things according to God's will. Not that when you go against the law that you should actually be condemned and destroyed. That's what Jesus basically was meaning. So to give deeper meaning means that Jesus had come to give us a better understanding. And through what he was saying and his acts that he was doing, there's a lot that we learn that gives us a greater meaning that we can attach to the Sabbath day, that is greater than just observation of one single day in a week. We all know very well that Jesus healed a woman in the synagogues, and so many others. They said, you know what, we have to plan and kill this man. He's breaking the law of God. I see clearly in the end, people were very happy because of the acts that Jesus did, the kind acts, the compassionate acts. But this continued to enrage, and the Jews, especially the Jewish Pharisees and religious leaders, and they were very indignant about it. Now, the Jewish view of a Sabbath was very different. and that's what I'm going to explain. The Jewish view of the Sabbath. First of all, the Jewish had this mentality where they felt this self-righteousness. They had the self-righteousness, and they felt they were holier than the rest, and all these things were based on works, external physical works, by maybe paying the tithe, by how you talk, by how you dress, all those things. So it was basically not from the heart, but from the external actions that one does. That was part of the ways the Jewish people were enforcing the Sabbath. The second, it focused on strict rules and implementation, where it was more about the do's and don'ts. So the Jewish way of interpreting the law of Moses was about the do's and don'ts, and still, just like the Mosaic law, it could tantamount to a great punishment, and even getting killed, depending on what law that you went against. So it was a very strict order at that time. And as we see clearly, people at this particular period were really under great obligation to observe the Sabbath according to the religious law at that time. But Jesus had a very different approach to the way he approached the Sabbath, and one of them, he said he was the Lord over the Sabbath, and he was greater than the temples. So the first thing is, Jesus wanted people at this time to understand that the Sabbath was good, but it was below him. He was above it, because he was the God of it. He actually created it, he initiated it. So at this time, most of these people did not understand what he meant. But for us now who live in the New Testament, we know exactly what Jesus meant. It meant that when you're seeking for salvation and greater things, he is supposed to be the center. He is supposed to be the point of focus, and not a day. All these things are good, but they are simply merely a shadow of something greater, and that something greater is Jesus Christ himself. We find this in the book of Matthew chapter 12, verse 6 to 8, which says, "I tell you that one greater than the temple is here. If you had known what these words mean, I desire mercy, not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the innocent. For the Son of Man is Lord over the Sabbath." So that is one point. We see Jesus emphasizing that his authority over the Sabbath. Second one, Jesus basically focused on extending compassion towards others. That's why he even insisted on that passage, which he continuously repeats in all the gospel books, of extending mercy more than sacrifice. What he requires of us is more of mercy and not sacrifice, because sacrifice are more of external. These are works, doing things to seem holy, but not really implementing from deep within our hearts. So Jesus, one thing he did, he used the Sabbath to express compassion, for he healed the sick, he mended the hearts of the brokenhearted, he brought hope to the people who had lost hope. Actually, as these Pharisees were focused on the day, Jesus was focused on the needs. They were focused, there's a part they were saying, there are 6 days to heal, to treat someone and help someone recover, but the 7th is to rest. But you can imagine someone expecting for healing to be from the first 6 days, and on the 7th you rest. But how would you be expected to rest yet you're still in pain? This is something, meaning that there's something greater. So Jesus was looking at that something greater. The rest was not something external, it was something spiritual. So Jesus knew what the people needed, he knew what the suffering people needed, and that's what he worked towards, regardless of the opposition that he received. So we see he healed the crippled woman, he healed the man who was sick, who had some infirmity. So Jesus focused on restoring, instead of just sitting down and saying, let us rest because it is a day, it is a Sabbath day. Jesus also emphasizes the thing of looking out for the poor and the needy. It is something greater. So Jesus is teaching us that actually to observe these days and these commandments and these laws, it's not about strict following of adhering to those laws themselves, but these laws are just helping us to have a heart to focus on the greater things. And the greater things, of course, it is loving God and loving man, because even Jesus himself, when asked, he said the two greatest commandments is the love of God and the love of man. And these two laws summarize the entire law of the Mosaic law. So he picked the greatest, and the greatest is reaching out with compassion and love and mercy towards one another, and not condemnation and judgment of one another. Jesus insisted on good works. Sabbath is meant for doing good, reaching out, doing the good, and the good is based on Jesus Christ. In Matthew chapter 12, verse 12, it says, "Therefore it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath." So he shows you that it's actually lawful. Yeah, they were saying it's unlawful to do anything on the Sabbath, but he says it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath. So the Sabbath is meant to do good. For example, healing, bringing joy, praying for others, and also focusing on a personal relationship with God. Not focusing on people, that one is not praying, that one has not gone to church, that one is not keeping the Sabbath. That is all irrelevant, because salvation is a personal issue. Even on the day of judgment, salvation will be personal. So it is a period, a state in which a person should always be focused on a personal relationship with God. Now, Sabbath is not supposed to be enforced by man. Jesus Christ clearly stated, because if enforced, and when enforced by man, it becomes burdensome, and it instead works to destroy the man. Yet Sabbath was meant to help the man, not to destroy the man. So he clearly stated this, and he clearly referred us to what rest means, which is the Sabbath. And Jesus referred to us to himself. So when you're looking for Sabbath, you're looking for rest. And when you're looking for rest, you have to find it in Jesus Christ. So it's bigger than a physical day. We see this in Matthew chapter 11, verse 28, where Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." So you see, he is referring us to his yoke. He's referring us to him, not to the other kind of way of observing the Sabbath. Because we clearly see, he says the other way of observing the Sabbath is burdensome. It instead becomes an extra burden on a person who's already burdened. But he refers us to himself to take up his yoke. You know, all those who are weary and burdened, come to Jesus Christ, you know, and he will give you the rest that you need. This is the rest that is meant to be the Sabbath. There's something greater than Sabbath. It is the rest in Jesus Christ. So he is the rest that we need. You don't need Jesus Christ on only one day. Jesus Christ, you need him every time, all the time, anywhere. This is the rest he means. And clearly we see him saying that his burden, once you bring your burdens to him, he makes you lighter. He makes you lighter because he takes it off. You know, his is not something that makes you feel like you're a slave and you must do something, but Jesus extends his grace, and he gives us peace and rest, and his makes you feel lighter, you know. So this is part one of what is the Sabbath, and I'm going to come back with the part two, and in the part two I'm going to explain the relevance of the Sabbath to us, the believers, and why I believe that God initiated the Sabbath, especially the greater purpose that he intended for the Sabbath. As Jesus said that he did not come to abolish the law, but he came to fulfill it. So we want to know what exactly did Jesus come to fulfill concerning the law of the Sabbath in the great 10 commandments of Mosaic law.